Yeah, it's on.
Oh, it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, and you need to wait while people gather.
Hi. I've been very busy, so I might be a bit confused tonight. Hope not. What's making me busy is that we realized that what we have to do is identify the most important things in life and make them clear for our viewers. Now, I've been saying for some weeks or months that the three most important things about having a good life, or that are needed to have a good life, a happy life, are mental health, good relationships, no close bad relationships, and no addictions. Now that hasn't changed. 53 years as a doctor, particularly interested in the people who suffered most and got the worst treatment. It was clear to me that that they were the major things. The people who suffered most were people who had serious mental health distresses, who didn't get good treatment and ended up getting street treatment. And street treatment is always addictive. So they started getting relief and they ended up getting far worse. And of course, life was torture for many, and many of them died. But what I realize now is that I need to make it a little bit clearer what good mental health is and what good relationships are and how to solve problems in those areas and how to solve addictions. So the most important thing about mental health and the most important thing in our whole life is our emotional habits. Our emotional habits. Our emotions, our feelings are habits. And some people have happy emotional habits, and some people have medium emotional habits, and some have horrible emotional habits. Severe anxiety, severe depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, those sort of things. And where do we get our emotional habits, and how can we correct them? Well, the great news, of course, is that they can be corrected. But there's so much fuzziness about this whole scene that most of us, including me in the past, were confused. What happens is that to be born, to get through our mother's pelvis and vagina, our head has to be small. That means our brain has to be small. And when we're born, our brain is very immature. So we can't do very much when we're first born. Whenever we need anything, all we can do is cry. And when we cry, someone fixes our needs. If they don't, we die. And of course, usually it's our mother that fixes those things. And being a mother is a bit of a marathon. Day and night for weeks and months, we need to be fed about every 3 hours. And we need to be kept clean and dry and warm and protected from too much noise or too much other disturbances. And a good mother, perhaps I should say an efficient mother, knows what we need. Pretty soon knows what we need. Knows when we need to be fed, when we need to be burped, when we need to be dried or cleaned, when we need to be warmed or cooled, and when there's too much noise that's disturbing us. But mothering is a marathon. And some mothers are inexperienced. They've never had a baby before. They've not had much to do with babies, and they're not quite sure what's disturbing us and why we're crying. And some mothers are too busy. They've had one baby every year for 4 years, and they've got 4 babies, and they suffer from terrible sleep deprivation and exhaustion and worry. And some mothers don't have any support. Mothers need support. They support the babies. They need people that support them, usually their mother and their partner. But for instance, in my family, I was born before the war, and my mother had 3 babies in 3 years and 3 weeks, and there was petrol rationing, and the roads were poor, and the cars were old, and I don't ever remember her having any support from either her mother or her mother-in-law or any siblings. She was on her own. And I'm sure that she suffered terrible sleep deprivation and anxiety. Nearest doctor and pharmacy 20 miles away, petrol rationing, old roads, old cars, all on your own. I can remember once when I was too big for a pram, being in a pram, being very miserable, and the nearest farming neighbour, one of the children was a nurse, and she came and took my temperature, and I don't think there was much that they could do, and of course I just got better. So and of course some mothers get sick. I talked today to a person who was a twin, and her mother had twins, and she suffered from depression, which wasn't diagnosed and wasn't correctly treated. for quite a long time. The great thing to know is you can't change things that happen. You can't change things that didn't happen that should have happened, or did happen that shouldn't have happened. But how do they leave their mark? They leave their mark by disturbing our brain electricity and our brain chemistry and our gland chemistry, because everything about our life is managed or controlled by electrical currents flowing along our nerves and by chemicals flowing in our blood, and all mostly masterminded by our brain, although there are some things that happen that our brain doesn't mastermind. And the good news is that if your chemistry messages and electricity messages got screwed up, we can't change what screwed them up, but we can correct them. We can correct our brain electricity, and we can correct our chemistry. We can correct our mental health habits. And of course, when we had to cry loud and long because we were hungry, or we were cold, or we were wet, or we were too hot, and we didn't get attention, and that made us anxious or worried, and that happened so often that it became a part of our mental, a part of our feeling habits, our emotional habits, was to be anxious or to be lonely, because we felt lonely when nothing happened. We felt anxious, but we also felt lonely, and we cried and we were sad, and we may have got irritable and angry. And if those things happen enough, what happens is that the electrical messages and the chemistry messages that underlie them get stronger and stronger and stronger, and they become habits, and that's our nature. And that affects our relationships, because it's in that first year of life that our relationship habits, the foundations are laid. If all goes well, we cry and we get fed and we get dried and we kept warm and everything. After a month or two, when our mother was attending to us, and she usually hummed and rocked us a little bit and smiled at us and talked to us, even though she knew that we didn't know what her words meant. But one day, when we were a month or two old, when she fixed us and she smiled at us, we smiled at her, and she loved that. We needed her, and we loved her. But mothers need babies and love babies. And so that was the beginning of our relationship habits. And hopefully our relationship habits was a happy, smiling one. But with some, it was an anxious or a lonely or a sad or an angry one, because we were neglected. And most babies didn't get what they needed when they needed it every time, but they weren't. They didn't go without enough for it to become a habit. The electrical messages and the chemical messages didn't flow often enough to become strong and to become a habit, because that's how things become a habit. The same electrical flows occur over and over again, and they just get stronger and stronger and stronger until they're a habit. And we don't just respond to what's happening now, we're partially responding to what happened in the past because it became a habit. So if you find, and of course, although the first year of our life was when the foundations were laid, a lot depended on what happened later. But mostly that early foundation was very important. But if the early foundations were not good, then it's probable that things later in life were not good. And of course, if we were unlucky enough to grow, develop in a war zone or during a famine or during some great climatic problem, then that may be altered the foundations that had been laid. So our feeling habits, emotional habits, and our relationship habits were very important. And how can we correct them if we have problems in those areas? Well, there are two tools. Today we do nothing without very good tools, or probably I should say almost nothing without very good tools. I can remember a long time ago when there were only two tools in the kitchen. One was a wood stove that you had to light every morning and mess around and get it going, and then keep on adding pieces of wood to keep it going all day. And the other tool was a big tin bowl that you washed the dishes and the pots and pans in. But today there's refrigerators, there's electricity, there's gas, there's air conditioners, there's dishwashers, there's grinders and mixers and all sorts of things. There's lots of tools just in the kitchen, but everywhere there are tools. And the tools in some factories are just incredibly sophisticated and able. But what I came to realize was that the tools in mental health and addiction were just very limited and very weak. There were only two tools. The first one was talk therapy. Talk therapy had two very big disadvantages or weaknesses. The first is to be a good talk therapist or psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist or counselor took years of training, and sadly often the wrong people did all that training. they did all that training because their families had problems, and they really weren't very suited to helping troubled people. So the need for experts who are rare and costly and hard to find was a major weakness in the talk therapy tool. The other major weakness in the talk therapy tool was it's so slow. You take half an hour to deal properly with a particular problem. And nobody only has one problem, they have lots of problems. And they all take a lot of time. So what I saw was that a lot of people got no talk therapy or almost no talk therapy, and there were conflicts there. If they saw a doctor, he was likely to write out a prescription and talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes, and then he had to see the next patient, because we had even a shortage of doctors, of GPs. And the other problem with talk therapy was that although it's an established fact that the most efficient way to get better is to have medicine and talk therapy, if you went to a psychologist, they were likely to say, oh, no, medicine's rubbish. So you got one or the other when you really needed both. So a lot of people got virtually no talk therapy, and nobody seemed to get enough talk therapy. So that was one tool with great weakness. The other tool with great weakness was medicines. The great weakness of medicines is there's a great conflict of interest between the people who take medicine and the people who make medicine. The people who take medicine want medicines to work quickly, to have good results, to soon get them so well that they don't need to take the medicine anymore. But so many of the people who make medicines want as many people as possible to take as much medicine as possible for as long as possible, and don't particularly want you to get better and not need to take medicine anymore. So the tools were inadequate, and there wasn't enough of them, and they had great weaknesses. And what I realized was that there was so much mental ill health and so much addiction that there was never going to be enough doctors and psychologists and therapists to do all the work that needed to be done. What was needed was lots of very good tools which were easy to use, that enabled a lot of people to do a lot of self-help. The only way we were going to cope with this workload was if people were enabled to help themselves more. Now, some people have got such serious problems that they can't do very much, but there are other people that are pretty smart, well educated, and they can be shown how to do a lot of self-help, do say 3/4 of what they need themselves with the right tools, and there are other people who can do half what need, or a quarter. So if that happened, if lots of people did self-help with very good tools, that would cut the waiting list, because waiting lists are such a disaster in my city, the main addiction clinic, had an 8-week waiting list. So someone comes and says, I'm desperate to get off heroin, I'm desperate to get off alcohol, I'm desperate to get off crystal meth. Oh, come back in 8 weeks. In 8 weeks they're either in hospital or in prison or in a cemetery or committing regular crime to pay for their chemicals, their addictive chemicals. So the most important things in life are good mental health, enough good relationships, no bad close relationships, and no addictions. And for that we have to enable self-help with very effective tools. So over a 25-year period I've developed 7 tools which are a package that covers everything fairly well. And they've been through a lot of stages of improvement and they're still not perfect, and I envisage that AI is going to add some more tools, but 7 pretty well covers it. So what are the 7 tools? 100 under-a-minute videos. Videos are the fastest, easiest, most accepted way of understanding mental health and relationship problems and what caused them and how to fix them. The second tool is a website. The website is mentalhealthvideosa2z.com. Just go to your phone or your device and look for mentalhealthvideosa2z.com and you can start to look at the 100 under-a-minute videos. My first video about 10 years ago was about 10 minutes and it got 10,000 viewings in 9 months, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but people stopped looking at long videos and it took me a long while to understand to come down to 5 minutes, to 3 minutes, to 2 minutes, and then 1 minute. And to get a video, a 1 minute video right is hard work. As Sir Winston Churchill said, I made a long speech because I didn't have time to prepare a short speech. Well, I usually have to go through the text for my videos between 20 and 40 times to get them down to under a minute without missing out anything very important, and with not having one word that doesn't need to be there. So that's videos, the website, and the next thing was the app. It used to take me half an hour with a patient to really come to grips with what their mental health problems were that had led to their addiction. And I was soon so busy that I didn't have half an hour. So then made a checklist, 20-question checklist, which my nurse did with the patient, and then in 3 minutes reading the checklist report and 5 minutes talking to the patient, I could really come to grips with their thing. But as technology advanced, it was apparent that an app was far superior to a paper checklist. Although apps cost a lot of money to make and take a lot of time to make, I was very lucky to find someone who did it help me with it, and for about a quarter of the price that it would have cost me if I had to do it with the usual professionals, and in half the time. You have to confer continually with the technician, and if you have to go to their office and find parking, and just too slow. But anyway, we developed the Mental Fix It app. The Mental Fix It app. So if on your phone you tap the App Store button, or if it's Android, the Google Play button, in 10 seconds you can download the Mental Fix It app, which is free. And it asks questions about every aspect of your mental health and any addiction you might have. It sounds like that would take a long time, but it doesn't, because each question has got 3 possible answers. No, it's not a problem. Yes, it's a moderate problem. Yes, it's a severe problem. And you just tap. You just read the question and tap one of those 3 answers. So you can go through the whole lot the first time in about 10 minutes. And as you choose and tap your answers for the last question, an instant report comes up on the screen. Preferably you do it on your phone, and that instant report tells you the 4 things that you really need. It tells you which 6 of our 100 under-a-minute videos will help your particular problems most. Because when the videos were 10 minutes, they contain quite a lot of information, but a 1-minute video only deals with one thing, and to cover everything, all the problems, you need 100. But which ones deal with your problems, that can be a bit of a needle in a haystack operation, but you do the app and you know which 6 videos are going to help you most, and you can watch those 6 videos in 10 minutes. So it can go 10 seconds to download the app, 10 minutes to choose your questions, and 10 minutes to look at the videos that help you most. The other thing in the report is which medicines likely help you most. The other thing is that there's a graph of your progress, and if your treatment's right, if you're getting the right treatment, your problem should be getting smaller. So severe problems become moderate problems become minor problems, so your graph is going down. And just at a glance, when you look at your report, you can immediately say whether your treatment is okay, keep on with it, or whether it's not okay, and you've got to change the treatment because the present treatment is not working. And the 4th thing it does is it tells you what you consider, by what you tapped, are all your problems. And you really want to know all your problems. A lot of people don't want to know all their problems. They want to have a few beers and forget about it, or to take a few Valiums and forget about it. But if you're going to get better, you have to know everything. And this app tells you everything. It's not what someone else thinks, it's what you think. It just asks you the questions, and you tap yes to the things that you consider are a problem. And if you find you've got 8 problems, you don't have to deal with them all at once. You can pick whichever one you feel ready to go for it, ready to study it, to watch the videos, to think about it, to talk about to a doctor or a counsellor or a friend or your partner or whoever. And you can deal with the problems and get rid of them one after the other. And every time you deal with a problem, you feel happier, you feel stronger, and you're a better problem solver. And eventually you can fix even the very big ones, because there are some very big, terrible problems that people have. Childhood sexual abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, severe low self-esteem. Yeah, so you can deal with all those issues. So it's important to understand your chemistry and your electricity. Our chemistry today, in humans today, is the end result of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of development and adaptation. And we've got two kinds of happy, healthy chemistry, and we've got unhappy chemistry as well. And what you want to do is you want to develop the happy, healthy chemistry by fixing the unhappy, unhealthy chemistry. Our happy, healthy chemistry are mainly, there are about 60 chemicals in our brain, but the main ones are dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and over 20 endorphins. Endorphins is short for endogenous morphines, because we produce morphines, and they help to relieve our pain and our distress. So that's one system, chemistry system, that mainly deals with happiness, but it also deals with healthiness. The endorphins manage our immune system. Our immune system is cells and antibodies and chemistry in every part of our body that fight infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. And they help to keep us healthy and strong. If our endorphins are low and our immune system is weak, then we're likely to get infections, to get allergies, to get inflammation, to have autoimmune diseases like ulcerative colitis and brain problems and cancers. So we need to know about those things and how to make them stronger. And what is so important, and I never knew this, and in my 53 years as a doctor, I never fully understood this, that happiness causes healthiness, and healthiness causes happiness. And unhappiness causes unhealthiness, and unhealthiness causes unhappiness. When your endorphins are strong because you're eating good food, you're getting exercise, you get sunlight, you have enough sleep, you have some pleasure and satisfaction in your life, so your chemistry is good, and that's making you feel happy. And a lot of the happiness is due to endorphins, and endorphins strengthen your immune system, and they make you feel good, and science has now proved that when you smile or laugh, your brain produces more happy chemistry that makes you even happier. So it goes, having a good day, feeling good, got good chemistry, so smile and laugh, get even more good chemistry, and get even healthier. And of course, we all have unhappiness sometimes, but some people have a lot of unhappiness. And if they have a lot of unhappiness, that depresses their endorphins, and then depressed endorphins depresses their immune system, and then they get sicknesses, and the sicknesses make them miserable, and that makes their health. So unhappiness produces unhealthiness produces more unhappiness. So it's very important to smile. You can't smile all the time. Sometimes you have to frown. Sometimes you have to get angry because things need fixing, and if you're not angry about them, you're not motivated enough to fix them, and that can damage your health. You know that we have to have pain. If we had no pain, we wouldn't live very long. You think about appendicitis. When I got appendicitis, I got pain in my lower right abdomen. I knew I had to find a doctor and get my appendix out within a reasonable time. In fact, I had an uncle who died because he took 2 days to get his appendix removed, and by that time the infection had spread and he didn't survive. So we have to have pain to tell us that there are things that need fixed. We have to have loneliness. If we never felt lonely, we could lack the relationships that we need and not realize that. If we were never sad, things could go wrong and we wouldn't realize that we had to correct them. If we never got angry, we would have problems that persisted that need to be fixed, and that your anger warns you that there's something that needs to be fixed and gives you the motivation to fix them. So although you want to smile and you want to laugh as often as you can, you also need to have some of these other things sometimes to tell you that things need fixing. And something that you need to know, which I was a doctor for 53 years and didn't really realize it, is that you need to be a good person. Selfish people are losers. Why is that? Well, if you're very selfish and often get a bit nasty and are unfair and tell lies, you can't have good relationships. So poor quality people have poor quality relationships. So they're missing one of the most important things in life, which is good relationships. And we do need pleasure. people who live for pleasure usually come unstuck, but people who have no pleasure often come unstuck as well. Pleasure is often dependent on dopamine, and dopamine is a happy chemical which happens pretty quickly and then wears off, and then we want it again, and that's the basis of all addictions. So how does addiction work? Addiction happens when people have mental health or physical distress, and they don't get effective treatment, and they're suffering, and they eventually get relief on the streets. And relief on the streets is always addictive. It's alcohol, or it's nicotine, or it's crystal meth, or it's cocaine, or it's something like that. So how are some substances addictive and other substances not addictive? Well, an addictive substance, first of all, gives you great relief to a suffering. So you take it and you feel good, and you only need a little bit, and it doesn't cost very much, and that's often a lot quicker and easier and cheaper than finding a doctor and a pharmacy and taking medicine. But the thing about addictive substances is that every time you take them, they give you relief, but they cause some resistance in your chemistry to them, so they are not quite as effective then, because you've got some resistance. So the next time, to get the same relief, you need a bit more to give you the relief and to overcome the resistance. So when you take more, you get more resistance. And next time you need a bit more to overcome your suffering and to overcome the resistance which you've developed. And you can, if you just have a few drinks of alcohol on Friday night and not the rest of the week, you're not going to become addicted to it. Today I talked to someone who has anxiety, and their doctor gave them Valium tablets, and they take half a Valium tablet every now and then. You don't, you get resistance, but the resistance fades after a couple of days, and then the next time you use it, you only need the same amount again because the resistance is gone. But if you're suffering badly and you have half a dozen drinks or 2 Valiums in the evening, and you feel better for a few hours, but you wake up the next morning and you've got all your problems again, and so you take another half a dozen drinks and another couple of Valiums, then the resistance builds up, it accumulates, and you need to take more and more and more, and you end up taking a lot, and it still doesn't completely relieve you because you've developed so much resistance to it, and you can't stop it because it's distorted your chemistry so much that your chemistry is not comfortable without the addictive substance. Pretty nasty situation. So how do you overcome addiction to an addictive substance? Like if you're drinking 5, 8, 10 or 15 drinks of alcohol, or you're taking cocaine or crystal meth or whatever every day, and then 2 or 3 times a day, how do you stop that? Well, some people would say go cold turkey. Just suddenly stop. Okay, if it works. Usually it doesn't work. And most people who try cold turkey, who are serious addicts, within 1 or 2 days just can't cope and they go back on their addictive substance. And even those who do make a great effort and manage to get off their drug of addiction often relapse. A few months down the track, something happens. They have a bit of a crisis. Or a mate who didn't manage to get off and wants you to get back on to keep him company gives you the stuff, and you in a moment of weakness you take it and you're gone. What I found worked best was that every time you get the urge to have the addictive substance, you delay taking it for a bit and you take a little bit less. And every time you delay taking a substance and take a bit less, you weaken the addiction a bit. What happens is that allows your chemistry to go back to normal, not back to normal, but to become a little bit more normal. And so you take less, more normal chemistry, less resistance, delay, take less, less resistance, more normal chemistry, and you go less and less and less until you get off it. For instance, I never ever now recommend anything that's addictive. That's not quite true, because I couldn't find any medicine for anxiety that wasn't addictive, but I found one that was only slightly addictive, and if I mixed it with other things, the addiction didn't develop. So what you do is, first of all, you decide that you definitely want to stop this addictive substance, and you think about it yourself and you talk to your friends and your family about how your life will be better if you can quit it. And then one day you just you delay taking it, and you take less of it when you do take it. Instead of starting to drink alcohol with breakfast, you start to drink alcohol an hour later, and you take less. Take maybe 10% less than usual. And soon you can take 20% less, and you can delay it for twice as long. So as an example, with smoking tobacco kills 7 million people a year. 7 million people. And for every one that it kills, it makes life much more unhealthy and troublesome for 10 others or 20 others. But usually with this reduction, delaying and reduction, by taking some medicine that does a bit of what tobacco does for you, you can usually reduce your smoking by about a quarter every 2 or 3 weeks, and after 10 to 12 weeks you've got it down to a point where you can quit it comparatively easily, and you're not going to relapse. Yeah. I'd just like to talk about a few miscellaneous items now. If you've had a lot of problems, ask yourself, would I get better faster if I were easier to help? Some people are just very hard to help, and some people are easy to help. The easy to help people ask the right people for help. They accept what they think. Some of it they don't accept, and they're easier to help and they get better. Other people might ask you to help them, but if you suggest anything, oh no, that's no good, and they just don't accept anything that anybody else thinks. Oh no, that wouldn't work. So ask yourself, am I a difficult person to help? I've met a lot of people who were difficult to help, and happily a lot of people were easy to help. And yeah, try to be a person who is easy to help. And another question you can ask yourself, would I get better if I had a good cry? One of the things that females do much better than males is cry. And that's a strength, not a weakness. Well, of course, it can be a weakness, but they get upset, have a good cry, and they're better, and they carry on. And the stiff upper lip males never cry, but they're sad on and on and on. So ask yourself, would I be better if I had a good cry? Yeah, so wish me luck as we say goodbye. In the last 2 weeks, I've come to the conclusion that what I must do is make much clearer the maybe 20 most important things in life. I've been talking about the three: the mental healthiness, the enough good relationships, and no addictions, but they're pretty big generalizations. I need to clarify about 20 things and make them easy. And I'm too old for technology. I'm 87 and I came late to technology, but fortunately I got an extremely helpful techie guy, and I had a suggestion in the last week that I find really interesting, because my hope originally was to translate all this stuff, or to put all this stuff in English and in Mandarin and in Hindi and in Spanish and in French. They're the 5 most widely understood languages in the world. But I thought, that's I'll never survive long enough to do that. But this friend I knew, Chinese girl, did a PhD at the local university here. She said, "Oh, well, you can get ChatGPT to translate this stuff into all the different languages. They can even make your speech right." And so now I realize that if I can clarify the 20 most important things, I can probably afford to get them translated into the other four main languages. And I think if these things become global, they'll catch on. There's so many people suffering terribly with mental health problems and addiction problems caused by mental health problems. And this general sort of resignation and expectation by troubled people that they're not going to get better, and by the healthcare professionals in general, it's too much, we'll never get it done. Maybe we might get it done. So I'm now going to try to show that I can actually switch this stuff off, and I'll be back on, what's the day, Tuesday? I'll be back on Thursday. So thank you. And please, please send me comments, questions, criticisms, anything that will help me make this system better.